let's get to episode 3 and a new guest. Mark McCandish is on the line from Northern California, and we have Roxy Lopez. Mark, she's on the line from near Phoenix.
Well, hi, Roxy.
Well, hi, Mark.
Great to talk to you again.
It's nice to talk to you.
To our listeners, the reason we asked Mark on the air is he has quite a background, really, in commercial aviation, in conceptual art. He used to, make these drawings for these aircraft companies on ideas and concepts of new aircraft, and he's very good at it. And as a result of that, he knows a lot about airplanes. So that's why I wanted him on. I wanted him to tell us what kind of airplanes are doing the spraying. I mean, what's the requirement?
I bought a very powerful set of Barska binoculars a couple years ago, 80 by 20, which is a huge set of binoculars. The primary optics on them are almost 3 inches in diameter out in front. Looks like something from a cartoon. But anyway, I was able to spend a lot of time watching the planes that fly over my area here in Redding, California. It's about 2.5 hours north of Sacramento. And we see a tremendous amount of this kind of geoengineering chemtrail activity here. And I'm not exactly sure why, but I'm assuming it has to do with the fact that we are sort of right in between two mountain ranges. The coastal mountain range and the Sierra Nevadas will sort of converge right at the northern end of California. But anyway,
that's a huge watershed for all of California, Mark.
Well, it is. Yes, we have all kinds of canals and things that go from Northern California down to the southern part of the state, as you probably know. We also have one of the largest hydroelectric facilities in the United States here next to Hoover Dam, which is Shasta Dam and the Shasta Reservoir. But the aircraft that I've seen are most often seem to be Boeing produced aircraft. I've seen everything from 747s to 767s, 737s. Surprisingly, I've even seen a military KC-135, one of the later generations of that aircraft with the larger turbofan engines, that was spraying 5 trails, not just one from each engine, but it was an in-flight refueling aircraft and has been used for many years by the Air Force for in-flight refueling of its military aircraft. And I've seen that aircraft spraying chemtrails also. Unusually, I've noted that these aircraft, in many instances, have no livery. That is to say, they have no airliner logos on them. They don't have any markings. Of course, at that altitude, it's really difficult, especially when you're looking directly up underneath them, to see any kind of bureau numbers or anything of that nature, because it would just be too small. But in just about every single instance, the aircraft, at least the larger aircraft that I've noted that we're spraying, seem to have an all-white undersurface or ventral surface. The underside of the wings, the engines, the belly of the fuselage, all were painted white. And the upper half of the aircraft were painted a medium blue. It's about the same color blue you'd find on a can of Pepsi-Cola.
I've heard about these planes with that special white paint job before. Why do you think they're doing that? I mean, painting, what's the significance of this white paint? Do you know?
Well, as far as I've been watching the aircraft for at least 2 years, because it suddenly occurred to me that there was something unusual going on here. It seemed to have started somewhere right around the end of the 1990s, around 2000, 2001, when we really started to see a lot of the activity. And I'd heard people mentioning things like chemtrails on the radio, and I thought that it seemed a little strange at first, but I did notice some of these persistent contrails or chemtrails back around 2001, and I noticed that a day later the headline on the local paper, which is the Redding Record Searchlight here in my part of the state, indicated that there were dozens of people who'd shown up at local hospitals complaining of respiratory distress. And so I thought, my God, I wonder if there's some kind of connection here. So at that point I started watching the amount of activity that was occurring in the sky, and would from time to time call the local Department of Health, the local Air Quality Resources Board, and find out what the particulate levels were at the different sensing sites around the northern part of the state. And you could see a direct correlation between the number of patients going into the hospitals and the amount of particulate that was in the air within a day or so after these spraying campaigns would occur. So, that prompted me to start looking at things like the toxicity of the different kinds of particles. I went over to Clifford Carnicom's website that has a lot of information, a lot of data about chemtrails, and started to make note of the kind of particulate that was being used in these chemtrails. Most often seemed to be aluminum oxide nanoparticles. There was some barium, some strontium, some copper sulfate, I believe. But started looking up the idea of whether there was any kind of toxicity to these materials. And I actually, in fact, I plugged in a Google search engine the phrase toxicity of aluminum oxide nanoparticles, and I came up with all kinds of research papers that have been conducted all the way back to 1993 by the Air Force Research Laboratory Human Effectiveness Directorate, Biosciences and Protection Division at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and other places. And so it was clear from looking at these studies, one of which was called In Vitro Toxicity of Aluminum Nanoparticles in Rat Alveolar Macrophages. Basically, that's a real fancy way of saying how do aluminum oxide nanoparticles affect the white blood cells in rats. And what they found was that under exposure to certain sizes of aluminum oxide nanoparticles, in this particular instance they were experimenting with 50, 80, and 120 nanometer sized particles, which are much smaller than a grain of salt. They were finding that these particles would demonstrate significant delayed toxicity when these animals were exposed to these kinds of materials. And in fact, one of the things about your immune system, and most people may not know this, is that the white blood cells are actually kind of like an amoeba. They're sort of a flexible shape, and they can basically swim up to and sort of engulf a pathogen, a germ, or some kind of toxic material that might be in your system, and it's called phagocytosis. And what they were finding in these rats was that when they were exposed to these particles, that the ability of the white blood cells to perform this function in the immune system was dramatically reduced. And so, in effect, what they were doing is they're knocking down the ability of the immune system to go after toxins and pathogens in the environment, particularly within the body of the rat. And, theoretically, also this would happen to people. And so then I expanded my research to see if there were other things, other kinds of toxicity that were being manifest by the use of these particles. And in fact, they were finding that the same kind of material would produce delayed seed production, toxicity in certain kinds of plants. You could suppress the productivity of crops. You could do all kinds of things with this material by spraying it in the atmosphere and allow it to basically settle out of the atmosphere onto the ground and expose people, animals, invertebrates in the soil. You could do all kinds of damage with this material, and they know it. There's no question about it. You can see it in the research papers that they put together on this. I mean, I've been looking at some of the war and national defense, chemical and biological warfare statutes under Title 50 of the United States Code, subchapter 32, written as recent as May of 2009. And it talks about open-air testing, disposal, that there needs to be presidential determination, that it has to be reported to Congress. And so I think that under the Freedom of Information Act, if these things are in fact required to be reported, that a FOIA request can be made so that these things can be brought out into the open. I mean, I'm looking at the statute right here, and it says that none of the funds authorized to be appropriated in this act or by any other act may be used for the transportation of any lethal chemical or any biological warfare agent to or from any military installation in the U.S., or in the open-air testing of such agents within the United States, or the disposal of such agent within the United States until the following procedures have been implemented. And then it gives you a list of all the ways they can go ahead and do that, one of which is that the Secretary of Defense has to be determined that the transportation of testing can be is made and is necessary in the interests of national security. The Secretary has brought the particulars and of the proposed transportation testing and disposal to the attention of the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So right there, you can see that if this stuff is being done, these different departments, these different agencies have to be given notice. Now, it's obviously being used. It's obviously being dispensed. So my idea, my suggestion would be to get a hold of an attorney like Tom Slade, who's showed some interest in this, get him involved in a FOIA request. Apparently the funding is available, from what I've been told, to send a Freedom of Information request to the Secretary of Health and Human Services to find out what the heck is going on and why are they doing it.
Mark, it just so happens some of those super tankers are based there at North Little Rock Air Force Base. Been by there many times on I-40.
You can see the upper fuselage section and the vertical stabilizer on these what ordinarily would be looked at as commercial aircraft, airliners, that are being worked on, prepped, refueled, or reloaded with whatever it is they're spraying right there in the just northwest of Tucson at this airfield there. You can see it on Google Earth. You can see all the tanks that they store the gases and materials in. You know, and I've looked at this from every way that I can think of to try and figure out why. Why are they doing this? I mean, I looked at and found studies that were done for both the Army and for the Air Force on the kind of chemistry that you find, the ignition properties and combustion chemistry of explosives used in jet fuel. JP-10 is what they were calling it, where they were using aluminum oxide nanoparticles, or what they call energetic materials, in fuel, not only as a way of enhancing combustion efficiency and increasing the range and the thrust of aircraft that employ this kind of fuel. And you can clearly see that there are reasons why they would want to investigate this. But just for those of us who tend to slide over into the conspiracy side of things from time to time, there was a lot of talk about thermate explosives being used to bring down the World Trade Center in 2001. And in fact, there was a scientist, Stephen Jones from BYU, that did find unequivocal evidence, spectrographically speaking, of aluminum oxide nanoparticles in the residue of the World Trade Center that was brought down. Now, it turns out that aluminum oxide in nanoparticle form, when it's combined with explosives, dramatically increases the temperature and the yield of the explosive potential of any kind of explosives, but they're finding that it also enhances the burn efficiency of certain kinds of jet propellants, liquid fuels. And so you can see how experimentally this might cover a number of different bases. Like Roxy was saying, it might enhance the range of aircraft by combining this. Then some studies as much as 40% by weight in the fuel. But of course, once these nanoparticles of aluminum oxide go through the combustion system of jet engine, it winds up being released almost in gaseous form. At 1800 degrees Kelvin is the temperature some of these engines burn at. And so, you have these vapors of aluminum that then get into the air. Now, I could see where, the overlapping use could be that it makes the upper atmosphere more reflective of solar energy. It might help to reduce the temperature. I mean, here in Redding, it's not unusual for us to see summertime temperatures in August, September of 110, 115 degrees sometimes. I've even seen it, I think in 97, it got up to 117 degrees one day. But on the days when they spray this stuff overhead and it starts to sort of, cover the sky in this haze, there's about a 10 to 15 degree reduction in the temperature locally, which is, of course, it makes it a lot more comfortable, but the sky has a white haze in it. You can't see the mountains, 50 normally could.
Mark McCandish and Roxy Lopez with us. We're talking about chemtrails.